Hello and welcome back to On Book, the Old Globe Shakespeare Reading Group. My name is Danielle Mage-Zamato. I'm the literary manager and drama at the Old Globe, and I am very glad to have you back with me today. We're continuing our conversation this week about Henry V, and I'm really excited today to talk about another aspect of the Globe's work on Shakespeare. One of the things that we do, as readers, all of us when we're reading the plays, is to sort of find those points of connection to our own lives. Do we feel more like Hamlet, or do we feel more like Horatio in this time we read it? Where do we find personal connections to the plays? And one of the interesting places where I think that we can talk about how that works is with some of the Globe's work with arts engagement. I'm very excited to have with us today two of our arts engagement teaching artists, Erica Phillips, and so I can bring you guys on. Hi, welcome, Erica. And James Pillar. Welcome, James.
Hello. Hi.
Erica is the Arts Engagement Programs Manager, and James is a Master Teaching Artist in our Department of Arts Engagement. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Erica and James coordinate a program called Reflecting Shakespeare, which we do in correction facilities across Southern California. And I wonder if you guys could start a little bit about talking about your backgrounds and what is the Reflecting Shakespeare program?
James, you want to start that?
Sure. So, yeah, of course. So I trained as a director. I'm originally from the United Kingdom. And about 4 years ago, I think now, in a conversation with Freedom Bradley Ballantyne, who's director of arts engagement at the Old Globe, he came up with this idea of us wanting to work in corrections and Shakespeare being a vehicle to do that. And we were really inspired by a program called Shakespeare Behind Bars. And the idea is that we take in a Shakespeare play, piece of work, and we come at that from a bunch of different angles, how you might put that on its feet as an actor, but really how you connect yourself with the characters, the story, the situation that those people in those stories are making their way through. Erica, go ahead.
Well, for myself, I trained as an actor, and strangely that I'm involved so much with Shakespeare right now because I was really involved with new work, my internship during my college days with Playwrights Horizons, and I was all doing all sorts of new stuff. And I'm originally from New York, and I came to San Diego, I don't know, between 15 and 20 years ago. And during the last recession, actually, when I got a term for my day job, in 2009, I started really diving into teaching, and I loved it. So I've been a teaching artist around town for a long time, and I've worked with a lot of community arts and a lot of education, and then also doing a lot of management with programs. So around the time where Freedom was talking to James about teaching inside, and he was already teaching inside a playwriting program, I'd been managing those kinds of programs. So I think that's why Freedom turned to us as a team to, launch this, to get someone with a little bit of inside knowledge, though we didn't have the kind of experience that we have now. I think James described the program pretty well. We started working at a prison in Imperial County, 2 hours east from us, called Centinela, and we're still there now. We started with one class. We now have 3 classes. We're hoping to grow to 4. And the best thing, inside, you've got to be your authentic self and not shine on and try to be better than you are. So I'll just keep that going. When we went in, we really had no idea what we were doing. We came in with some ideas of what the program should be, but it really shifted on its feet and then so anchored in what it should be. But it had some growing pains at first.
Failed dismally in our first classes.
Oh yeah, the first class was terrible. Bringing in some Richard II, like a monologue in prison. These guys will like it. Just,
talk us through what the program is. You show up in the first day, and you've got a brand new shiny Shakespeare play. What are some of the Shakespeare plays that you've done with people incarcerated?
We have done Romeo and Juliet, either with all men or all women. We have done Hamlet, Scottish play,
Winter's Tale,
Othello.
Midsummer. And most recently Henry V, which is why we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Part 1.
Oh, Henry IV Part 1 too. Okay, well that's great. We'll talk a little bit about maybe some of the issues in both those shows. So what's the program structure? How long are you reading the text or looking at the text? Are you actually performing the play? What's the structure of the program?
So before we come in, this is usually we're 18 to 20 weeks long with the men, and we're 13 weeks with the women, and that's just an institutional kind of decision about what works inside for that facility. But we take basically the first half of the program and we decide, okay, so if that half is like 8 weeks, 9 weeks, or 6 weeks, that's the number of times we're going to show up with new text. So there's a lot of pre-time going, okay, weeding it out. We don't do like a modern translation. It's all Shakespeare's words, but we do edit down, and just for time, we're not dumbing it down. We just need to we need to get through stuff. And so when we look at the play, we're thinking, what in this scene, what in this play is going to create the greatest impact in terms of having a connection, being able to reflect on it personally. So sometimes big plot things will end up summarizing to say, this is how we get to this next point in this character's life or on this journey. But basically we go in, and for the first half of the program, I would say it's kind of divided in thirds. Like we play a lot of theater games. We get to know each other. That's a big process inside where that kind of connection is really not what you do.
It's actually, really establishing those first connections in a world where being playful and revealing of yourself, like those actor theater games that we might take for granted, those are huge steps that people take to play those moments. Of even being sat in class with people who they may never talk to or be even allowed to talk to for all sorts of reasons. So there are a bunch of essential human connection moments that we spend a lot of time focusing on at the get-go.
And then we pull out the text and we tend to read it in a circle. Week by week, as we get more comfortable reading the text, we move from just sitting and reading to standing up and feeling more like the character, to just being like handing over the script and pairing people out and saying, okay, we're only going to hear this after you rehearse it and come back. So that's come back to the whole group. So after we read it, we break it down, we try to unpack it. Then we'll do some more actor skill kind of on feet activities. And then we always pose a reflection question that starts with writing. It turns into discussion, that kind of really attentive listening, empathetic listening, and sharing. That's a big deal there. So once that gets rolling, sharing what happened, what you wrote on last week also gets fed in there. So that's like the first half. And then after that, we continue warming up to get ourselves ready to work. But after we're rehearsing, and we put together a script that includes both the Shakespeare and the original text, and we cast it by scene. We give everyone just enough to push themselves. We don't really have a Hamlet or a Henry. So that's the structure.
Wow. So I know that you did Henry V partly because the Globe was doing Henry V. When you're talking about things like how people connect the plays to their own lives, I'm wondering what were some of the points of connection. And I know you did Henry IV Part 1 before without even, doing it because the Globe was doing it. So that was a piece that you guys thought might be one that incarcerated people would find a connection to. Did you do that one specifically with the men, or both with men and women?
That one we only did with the men, right?
Yeah, I think we only brought that to the men. It's kind of felt like a pretty male story. The living up to your father and hanging out with the boys. I would probably do that one with the women. But it was great to work with you, Danielle, to make that decision that we were going to bring Henry V in, because of course we want to deepen that that knowledge of what's going on inside and humanitize those incarcerated folks and have their voices heard. But in terms of points of connection, it starts right away. When you're in a prison chapel having a class and everybody is in the same blue uniform, and the prologue is basically begging the audience, hey, you're going to have to bring your imagination. We can't bring this story here. It's I'd never heard that speech sound more truthful. You know, you'll have to deck our kings.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're in a blank room with, a blank beige room with uniform chairs, and that's what you have. So that
in fact, no costumes, no props, really. You have nothing really like that, do you?
So it all becomes about engaging the performer's imagination and that connection with the receivers and the listeners,
But there were a lot of points in the script. So right away, as we know, Henry is dealing with, like in the tennis ball scene, he's dealing with having created a reputation for himself and creating a set of expectations in the world about how he might behave because of how he acted when he was young. And is the world going to give him a chance to change?
Right, right.
Or think that he's changed? Does it matter if he has changed? Will anyone see him any differently?
Right. And in that scene, he confronts his reputation, or what people think is his reputation. He has to deal with that, and that moment of what he then takes as disrespect straight away.
So when you guys, you'll bring in this scene. I'm trying to take us as our readers through the kind of exercise that you might do with some of the people in your programs. So you would bring in the scene. You guys might read the scene, like the tennis ball scene.
Absolutely.
Go around in a circle and read it, hear it out loud from different voices. Is that how it works?
Exactly. We'd go around in a circle and read it. We would start by not casting it out. So that can be more confusing because anyone can be any character based on who's around the circle, but it gives everyone a chance to read.
Which is important, right?
Which is important. And then you might read it around the circle, like you take this part and you take this part up until here, and now we'll shift it. That scene we did put on its feet. That particular scene that we put on its feet at least once before time was up to like get a feeling, especially when the I'm trying to remember what the French character is that comes in, but to get this feeling of coming into this wall of English elite and to really set that up, because you don't really feel that when you're just reading in a circle. Yeah. And that's something you can really relate to. Like, how am I going to speak to this wall of power, and how is this wall of power going to present themselves? I'm just smiling because I'm remembering those guys, and it's been a long time since we've been able to see them. So we would do that, and then one thing we would often do is just set up a quick write. So we would have a question ready to go, usually already printed in our materials, and just to make sure that it was just a gut reaction kind of writing, we would often start with, okay, quick write, respond to this question. And that would be pre-prepared. Sometimes it gets set up as homework. Sometimes there's time to share. Sometimes you got to get out of the room. It's all sorts of things can happen in person.
And do you generally find there's an enthusiasm for tackling the language, or like reading the stuff out loud, or is there hesitance, or is there like, guys, what is this word? How does that go?
It goes across the board. Really goes across the board, like a million reactions. So some people who just have this amazing facility with language and bring this huge truth to these words straight away. People who really struggle with every word, and they have to break down every small portion. So really across the board. But that's why we try and cast out everyone, to give everyone a shot at different characters and different parts of the text. Because as we all know, like even as actors, when you're up, sometimes getting around that language can be really tricky. Like it's really hard. So we try and always leave space as we go to unpack those words and try and have at least a collective understanding, if we can, about what's happening.
And we encourage people to barrel through and just, because it's okay to be wrong. To set up an atmosphere where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you completely botch it. Just go for it. And that's a big emotional step also.
Yeah. Well, we can come back to language. I know we're going to talk maybe a little bit more about that in a minute. I'm wondering, in terms of like, let's say we're reading this scene, the tennis ball scene, we see Henry get this gift, which is actually an insult in disguise. Right. And then it's like, burn, you have this like, and then him having this response of, oh yeah, well, you're going to see what that little boy or that player, that whoever he was in this old days, what he's become now. And so I'm curious about, like, you would write a question which is maybe like, talk about change, talk about, I mean, just what kind of reflection question could we ask the people watching maybe to answer what they would think? Like, can people change? Do you change? Do you believe others can change? What's the sort of question you might bring to the group?
Well, we always brainstorm a way that's not a yes and no. Otherwise, then we have to write discuss or just yeah.
No.
You know, we're about to launch a Reflecting Shakespeare television program for institutional TV, and it's going to be on our Old Globe YouTube. And we were talking today about Henry IV, and so there was that direct question: do you believe people can change? Is redemption possible? What does it take to make that change? With this particular thing, James, I know we had a question about expectations.
It was something about expectation and the connection between expectation and reputation, right?
It was something about like what expectations do people have on you based on your past?
Right.
So go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I think there was a follow-up question about, you know, and if you are looking to change, you know, and do you believe in change? Gosh, I wish I could remember how we phrased it. We do that's a lot of our planning. It's like fine-tuning the question.
Well, I would love to, I'll pose a similar question to the people watching right now. Are there expectations that are put on you because of your past actions? And do you believe that others can change? Do you believe that you truly change over the course of your life or others? That's a little bit of a yes or no question, but hopefully, and quote, ... discuss. We can say ... discuss in the reading group. So I'd love for some of those to pop up on the thing. We've got one here. I'm going to pull this one up here. This is Laura asking, it seems as though people incarcerated might have strong opinions about being judged forever for their past. Were they comfortable articulating that?